Carl warned us that this one would be a tricky one this week, and he was not wrong. I particularly had to go back and ask him lots of different questions about the basketball terminology, so apologies if I still make mistakes in this solution video. But let's just talk through this data structure first of all, because I found it tricky to wrap my head around the first time I saw it. So in this first data set, we've got the seed, which basically means the position of the teams where they finished in the league, so how good each team is. So in essence, the better you are, the more chance you have of getting the top seeded draft players. So basically that is what our seeding column is, and then each of these next columns is 1 to 14 of the draft picks. And so in this first column, everyone has a percentage chance of getting this first player, and the better you are, the more chance you have of that, and so on and so forth. Once it gets past the fourth player, then not everyone has a chance of getting them because only the first 4 are allocated randomly. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It took me a while for that to make sense for me, so no worries if not. And then our first step of our actual data prep for this challenge is just to join on the team names on the seed so that we can associate each row with a team rather than just a seed, make it a bit nicer going forwards. And also it's good to have it structured this way because for next year you could just bring in a different team's input to do the draft all over again. Makes it dynamic. Anyway, now let's get on to the tricky bit. So you can see here that I've got 4 different grouping steps, which just means like a bunch of steps grouped together, and they all basically do the same thing, but for the first pick, the second pick, the third pick, and the fourth pick. So I'll only go through one of these. You can see on Twitter this week lots of different solutions, and I will confess that I took my first step based on Jack Parry's solution because I was a bit lost as to what to do. So let's take a look at it. So you can see basically before this step that our percentages are sort of they've got decimal places involved with them, shall we say. So if we multiply them by 10, and then we can scaffold out that data set. So we'd have 1,000 rows in total, but we'd have 1 row per 0.1% chance of that team getting that player. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's show you what that looks like. So multiplying that column number 1 by 10, and then scaffolding it. So then each team, so this team, for example, has a 5 or a 0.5% chance of getting that player, has 5 rows in our workflow. And just a quick reminder about scaffolding, our column number 1, our 1 column basically is our upper bound of the scaffold, so it's greater than or equal to the scaffold, so it gets 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 through from the scaffold. If I just click here, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but obviously we just get the 5 still in the 1 column. So that's the way that I always have to think about it, so hopefully that's useful to you too. So we're just going to remove some extra fields that we don't need, and then add on a row number to this data set. So a row number rather than a ranking, so that every row has a different unique number to it, and we're ordering that based on, the number 1 column, just so that we have a row number associated. If you're not familiar with the row number function, it's an analytical calculation, and this is kind of the syntax for that. If I just zoom in on that a little bit to make it a bit bigger, we're ordering by our first column and it's in a descending order and just assigning a row number. It doesn't matter too much. We're trying to make this random as possible, so however you number them is just a good way to go. Next, we're going to take the max number of rows, so in this case it's 1,000, and this is where the random steps comes in. So initially, to build out this challenge, I was using the random function, so timesing the random function by the row number, so that our number is between 0 and 1,000, rounding that to 0 decimal places, so it's a whole number, and that would give me a random number between 0 and 1,000. But given the way that Tableau Prep caches its workflow, it was updating the random number too frequently and it was messing up the end result when I knew that the logic was right. So just for the purposes of this solution, so that I can show you that the solution it gets to is correct, I'm just hard coding in the random number for now, for full transparency. But I built the workflow using it random. And yeah, we're highlighting it with the dev teams. Don't worry if this is happening to you too. So that's how we get our random number in there. And then we join that back onto our row number step on that random number equal to the row number so that only one row gets brought through. And in this case, it is Minnesota. So our team Minnesota, the 6th seed, they are getting the first draft pick. And this step is just, getting rid of different fields so that it's all good. And then the final step that we need to do is just to join this back onto our dataset before this grouping step so that we can exclude Minnesota going forwards because they have had their draft pick. They are now excluded going forwards. We go from having 14 rows to having 13 rows, and this is a left-only join in that instance. And then, we do it all again. We go into group 2 and do all these same steps again. So I won't go through that for 3 and 4, but I will just show you how we union those picks together at the end. So we've got our selected pick, our 1, 2, 3, 4, the seed of the team and the actual team themselves. And then basically what comes out of group 4 that hasn't been picked yet, those teams that haven't been picked yet, they just come out as the seed and the team. And we need to then assign these teams that are left over the remaining picks in order of their seeding. So to do that, we're using a rank function initially. So we're ranking in an ascending order on the seed, but that starts from a 1. How do we fix that? Well, we just go ahead and use a calculator field to add 4 onto each of our selected pick values. Get rid of all the unnecessary fields and union it with our 1 to 4 picks, and we have all of those picks here. So hopefully that all made sense. It wasn't actually quite so bad once you realize what was going on with the random function and how maybe there's some bugs in Tableau Prep that we need to work through. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that challenge. You enjoyed the challenging nature of that challenge, shall we say. And thanks so much for watching.